The Meeples and Miniatures podcast is very proud to be sponsored by Two Fat Lardies, Firestorm Games, and the generous donations of you, the listener. We appreciate everyone's continued support of this podcast. The Meeples and Miniatures podcast, episode number 266. It's All Greek to Me, part 1, with hosts Neil Shuck and Mike Hobbs. This show was recorded on Wednesday, the 24th of April, 2019. Hello, good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Meeples and Miniatures podcast. 'Tis I, the Brummy Dwarf, Neil Shuck, coming to you on this rather, well, not as pleasant as it has been, but interesting Easter week. The warmest it's been. How are you, Mr. Hobbs? Good evening, sir. The Welsh Wizard himself is with us once again. Hopefully not glowing.
Hello, Neil. No, I'm not glowing. I was very good during the sun. I kept in the shade, kept myself hydrated, and did very little.
Well, I don't say that. I mean, obviously, this might be spoilers for the hobby section, but considering what you were doing in the sun, it looked most impressive.
Yes, but let's not jump ahead.
Okay. Yes. What's the phrase? Which has already been used online at least once tonight. Spoilers.
Yes.
Spoilers indeed. Hello, welcome, and thank you for joining us. This evening, it's just a two-header. It is just myself and Mr. Hobbs as we tackle the first of a two-parter. The first of a two-parter of shows, of which it has been minutes in the planning.
Many seconds.
Many seconds indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. Yes. So welcome to part 1 of It's All Greek to Me. Yes. So yes, we thought we'd take the opportunity to considering that there appears to be a lot of Greek about at the moment.
Yes, it is suddenly popular.
It is suddenly popular. So we thought we would take the time over the next couple of episodes to discuss various aspects of Hellenistic gaming, and that's not easy to say at this time of the evening with my teeth in.
Mm-hmm.
So it is just myself and Mr. Hobbs on this show, but we will be joined by a very special guest on the next show, all being well. Again, spoilers as opposed to who that's going to be, but
yeah.
But friend of the show, we look forward to speaking to him.
And he has said he's going to do it, so he can't back out. We've got him in writing.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Most excellent stuff. Right, okay, so here we are. So yes, so this evening, part 1, we will be talking all about kind of smaller scale gaming, concentrating on two aspects in particular, or two games in particular. So we'll be doing kind of like 2 mini reviews, if you wish. 2 mini reviews of games. But obviously, before then, we have lots and lots of hobby stuff to talk about.
Oh, yes. It's been busy.
Yes. It has. It's been very, very busy. Yes. So, tell you what, let's take a break. Let's refresh the beverages, and we'll dive in and chat about Chat about what's been on the shopping list over the past few days. The Meeples and Miniatures podcast is very proud to be sponsored by the multi-award-winning Two Fat Lardies. In the recent Wargames Illustrated Awards, they were recognised no less than 3 times. Best Game of 2018, Chain of Command. Best New Game of 2018, Water Tanker. And were also recognised for their level of customer service. This award means that Chain of Command has actually won Best Game for 2 years running. And to celebrate this, Two Fat Lardies are running an award-winning sale on their website, with copies of the rules for Chain of Command, Sharp Practice, Water Tanker and Dux Britanniarum all reduced. So, if you have just the rules themselves, or perhaps a bundle including campaign books or scenario expansions, check out the Two Fat Lardies website at twofatlardies.co.uk. And whilst you're there, why not pick up a copy of the Lard 2018 magazine, a publication packed with scenarios, campaigns, articles, interviews and reports. And then don't forget to check out Lard Island News, where Rich has posted a series of articles about creating your own jungle terrain. Award-winning rules, inspiring blog posts, and great spare time reading. You can find it all on the Two Fat Lardies website, twofatlardies.co.uk. Play the period, not the rules. Dearly beloved, here we are gathered together, and we shall bask in our sinfulness.
That sounds wrong.
It doesn't actually, but yes, we have been. Yes, I'm not feeling penitent at all. So obviously, I would fail the test and get my head chopped off. But there we go.
Oh, I missed something. Is this a new rule in the church? I know I haven't been for a while, but tell me about decapitation.
You missed the blindingly obvious Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade reference within that sentence.
Okay, yes.
You know, the first test. You know, the penitent man enters the enters heaven.
Yes.
The penitent man enters heaven on his knees.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, he gets decapitated. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. With you now.
Right. Okay. Good. It's not so much fun. It's not so much fun when you have to explain it to people. But there we go. Anyway, so here we are. We're in the confessional,
mm-hmm.
and it's been crikey.
2 weeks.
It has been 2. Yeah, it's been 2. It's been 2 weeks since. Yes, we were late recording the last show because we wanted to do a review of Salute, which meant we were recording a week later, and then basically it put us a week behind ourselves.
Yeah.
So I mean we'll kind of catch up, but we're a week later than we normally are in our schedules at the moment.
Yes, yeah. Which is not good.
No. So hopefully, because of things like Easter and being on holiday and various other bits and pieces, we can catch up, and we'll be okay.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, yes, purchasing. Basically, since Salute, because Salute was the last kind of purchases we talked about.
Yeah.
Ooh. I'll go first. Actually, I've been. Yeah, it's actually been rather quiet, I believe. I'm just trying to think. Okay, there are three things. There are three things that immediately spring to mind. Stuff that hasn't arrived physically in my house yet doesn't count. Okay?
No, that's the rule.
That's the rule.
Mm-hmm.
So next time, next recording could be slightly more interesting than this one. However, they haven't arrived yet, so they're not counting in this show. Them's the rules.
Them's are the rules.
Them's are the rules. So, I don't think I actually mentioned, but I did actually pick up the one Star Wars Legion box set I was missing in the last couple of weeks, which was the Snowtroopers, the Imperial Snowtroopers. I didn't pick those up when they were originally released, and it's been bugging me. It's that little hole in my. Okay. I know there's a. I haven't bought the individual boxes of the stuff that you get in the main box. I haven't, because I bought 2 boxes. I'm not buying any more. But from the rest of my collection, that little space has been bugging me, and especially considering the fact that I reckon that at the point where the Clone Wars base set comes out, which I believe is earmarked for a Gen Con release, I reckon they'll be pretty much done with Galactic Civil War. Well,
there can't be much more to releases.
Well, quite. I mean, if you think about it, they've just announced it was the Rebel veterans, which are the Hoth troopers, and the Tauntaun riders. Mm. Then they announced Dewbacks and Shore troopers, which were kind of the couple of things that they were missing from the Imperials. And I reckon there's only one thing that's missing from the Rebel side.
Is that Ewoks?
Please, no. Please, no. I reckon they're missing one operative, which is Lando.
Oh, yeah. Well, you got Lando plus the Cloud Troopers, whatever they look like.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, because obviously you got the Cloud Troopers in. But what I was thinking is that there aren't any particular other Imperial equivalents, because effectively they've been releasing pairs of stuff. So I reckon. Because I didn't go on record last time and I regretted it, because basically I think I said myself and Josh had a conversation in the car, and we read, okay, what's left for them to release for the Imperials, and we came up with Shore Troopers and Dewback Riders. Mm. We were pretty sure on Shore Troopers, but weren't sure on Dewback Riders. So I did a brief air punch when they announced it, because I was like, I didn't bother telling anybody. So this time, okay, I'm putting it out there.
Yep.
That I reckon the final 2 releases for Galactic Civil War will be 2 operatives. For the Rebels, we'll have Lando Calrissian, mm-hmm. and for the Imperials, we'll have IG-88.
Yes.
That's my prediction.
Okay, that's good.
Because, especially considering the 2 Imperial operatives so far have been Boba Fett and Bosk. Who's the other famous bounty hunter from Empire Strikes Back? Well, potentially there's 2, but obviously the one everybody remembers, I believe, is IG-88. Mm. So that's what I reckon, and then I think Galactic Civil War is done, because they'll be moving on to Clone Wars. Anyway, that's a big diversion to talk about one purchase.
Yeah.
Anyway, back on subject. Okay, so other than that, I picked up, it was 2 things at the same time. One was an impulse purchase, which was actually a second box of Goblin Infantry from Oathmark.
A second box?
Yes, I bought a box last year, mm-hmm. I think. I bought a box of Goblins and Dwarves last year. But I'm suddenly thinking, obviously with Saga Age of Magic imminent. It's released today as we're recording this. I'm not picking my copy up for a few days, so it doesn't count yet. However, thinking about the standard size of Saga armies,
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking I'll need 2 boxes of infantry. Okay, we know there's Wolf Riders coming in future, but in the meantime, considering you've got, what is it? It's basically spearmen, hand weapons, and archers that you can make out of the infantry. I reckon 60 odd infantry plus some character figures. I've got the character figures. That'll be a nice basis for a goblin army or a goblin warband or what have you, and then we'll throw in some cavalry when they release the Wolf Riders. Sorted.
Yeah.
Cool. Right. So got some of those, and then the biggie, because yes, it was actually released on the day they said it was worldwide, which shocked me because I was expecting us in the UK to have to wait for 2 weeks. But Journeys in Middle-earth has arrived.
It has.
That's a thing of beauty.
It is. It looks very nice. I haven't played it yet.
I've punched it. I've bagged it. I've sleeved it. And have I played it? I tell you, I've had it over a week and I've not played it yet. I'm annoyed. I'm annoyed. I've had the I was hoping to have the opportunity to play it yesterday, and unfortunately, I was let down badly. I was let down badly by Josh.
I'll just play solo.
Yeah, I want to play with Josh.
Okay.
I want my first playing experience to be with another player, and I'm just reluctant to do spoilers.
Okay.
I want the first campaign to be one of discovery with my Lord of the Rings buddy, which is Josh.
Yeah.
So I'm saving it, but all being well, Friday. First go.
Cool. That'd be good.
But that I think that's about it. Up to you, sir.
Well, it was my birthday.
Yes, happy birthday.
Thank you. And my family being fantastic, didn't buy me anything, but gave me lots of Amazon vouchers.
Excellent stuff.
Which is always useful. So I went on a bit of a spurge buying some rules and stuff. So I picked up a set of role-playing rules called 13th Age, which are fantasy D&D-esque style game, but it's a game system that is used for different sort of backgrounds as well. So there is a 13th Age Glorantha supplement which I'm going to pick up just to get that slightly different feel.
You shock me.
Yes. So I got that. I bought 2 Osprey sets of rules.
Oh wow! Okay.
Which are one we'll be discussing later, and the other one we will be discussing next week.
Oh, okay. What's the phrase? Spoilers. Yes.
No, I won't tell what those are. On top of that, I got some stuff for Mortal Gods because I'm enjoying my Greek period. I got some Little Big Man Studios shield transfers because you gotta have Greek shield transfers.
Oh yeah. You're not gonna play them, are you?
No.
I mean, come on.
Shield transfers. It's the way ahead. I picked up some basin sheets from Foreground. Oh, not Foreground, sorry. From Footsore. So I can, it gives me a bit more sort of leeway for doing extra units and stuff. I also picked up the Athenian box set.
Oh, you got the Athenians. Excellent. Yes, to go with the Spartans. Yes.
Yeah, well, yeah. So that means I can do Spartans, I can do Athenians, and then the figures which are in the core box set, I'm going to turn into a sort of semi-mythological style.
However, it's could be getting into details that we're going to talk about. Spoilers. Aren't the figures in the main box that you don't get in the other 2? I'm thinking, is it archers?
There's no archers in there. There's Scylla, sorry, what are they called? Yeah, there's light troops, there's unarmored hoplites, there's armored hoplites, and then there's slingers.
Yeah. So I just
Yeah,
had it in my head that the main box had some figures that you didn't get in the other two boxes, but I could be wrong.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean you in the Spartan box, because I haven't opened up the Athenian one yet. But the Spartan box came with armored Spartan hoplites, unarmored Spartan hoplites, and I think, and some metal figures. So. I did actually buy another sprue of Spartan armored hoplites from eBay for £5.
Oh right, okay.
So I've turned those in.
just in case you didn't have enough.
Yeah, well, they come in sprues of 8, and I put together the 8 plastics. There's one pose I wasn't really happy with, and then I worked out that I could just use the second sprue and do a couple of groups of I think what they called Spartites, the elite Spartans. Right. So I thought, well, that's useful. So I did those. Yeah, so I got that. I also got the aforementioned Journeys in Middle-earth. Cool. And that's about it for me.
Cool. Excellent stuff. So anything on? I must admit, I missed something. I did miss one thing. That's because basically I bought it this afternoon and forgotten about it. Right. Pen and Sword have been doing have done a series of books by people, Battlefields in Miniature. I think the first one, which is Making Realistic and Effective Terrain for Wargamers by Paul Davis, is currently on sale. The Kindle edition is currently on sale on Amazon for 68p.
Well, that's worth picking up.
Because it's 30 quid in paperback. It was 68p, and I went, oh, there you go. Funnily, I think it was. I found it whilst looking to see if I had a PDF copy of one of the sets of rules that we will be discussing. I do have it. I do have it in hardback somewhere, but it's. I think it's on a. I think it's on a bookshelf that I haven't managed to get to yet. I was umming and ahhing whether to get a PDF for this evening, and he said, "Oh, people who have bought this book also bought this in the list, as Amazon do,
as it does, yeah,
as it does." And he went 68p, 68p. Good grief, that's a must.
Yeah.
So yes. Battlefields in Miniature, Making Realistic and Effective Terrain for Wargamers by Paul Davis, Kindle edition, 68p. At the moment on Amazon. That is of the 24th of April.
Yeah.
So,
cool.
Be worth picking up. Other stuff on the radar, very much depending on, basically I'm kind of trying to be a little bit good. I've got a couple of Kickstarter pledge managers that I've got to fill out. So, because I haven't done, like for example, I haven't done my my What's It of Avalon one yet, and I didn't realise they had a couple of new extra add-ons, and I haven't, and obviously we've got Shadows of Kilforth or whatever it was, wherever they called it.
Yeah.
That pledge manager is due imminently, and I really fancy a playmat for that.
Mm.
I really fancy getting one of the playmats for that and stuff like this. So I'm kind of trying to be good, but obviously there's all the Star Wars Legion stuff that they've now announced. And then basically I think the only other two things that are kind of on my radar at the moment is that, in the same way as I've just bought a second box of goblins, I might end up buying a second box of elves.
Okay.
But I might kind of wait until I start putting my elves together.
Yeah, paint them first, mate.
And then the other thing is, it's gone. It was there. It was right in front of me, and I think you're saying, "Oh no, don't do that. Paint these first." And it's gone, as in
Go on.
Like tears in rain.
Well, dear listener, we'll never know.
We'll never know.
What could it be? Well, answers on a postcard to what you think Neil was thinking about, and send it to the usual address. Or just wait a few minutes until I start speaking, and you go, "Oh, hang on." Just no. It's
yes, I know what it was. Yes, I know what it was. I know what it was. Okay. I know what it was. Yes, the next.
Don't tell us. Tell us at the end of the next podcast. We'll have a competition. Whoever can guess what you're talking about will win no prize. Don't tell us. I need to know now.
I think. By the end of the next podcast, I've forgotten again. Yeah. No, it's the. Oh, and actually, this brings up a subject. This brings up a subject I want to have a very quick discussion on.
Okay.
Right. In the next set of in the next mission for Rangers of the Shadow Deep.
Mm-hmm. When you say the next one, which one are you on now?
Right. Oh, sorry. Okay. This is the next book that's just come out. The Temple. The Temple. Is it Temple of Madness?
Yes.
That one. One of the things included in that are something they call Temple Guardians.
Guys in robes.
However, yes, when you read the description of Temple Guardians, basically it's cultists, and then cultists armed with two-handed weapons.
Yeah.
Oh, what do we need? Oh, and that means I'll probably need to get the Frostgrave Cultist box.
I could recommend the Otherworld Cultists, which are fantastic. A little bit more expensive for your more, refined cultist.
More, yes, or the more discerning, the more discerning and less cheapskate gamer.
Well, there is that as well.
Yes. So yeah, that's what I was thinking of. Yes, I need to remind myself of the Wakier skeletons from Rune Wars, how armoured they are. Could you call them armoured skeletons, or are they armoured one? Yeah,
they're all armoured. They're
all armoured, in which case I need some unarmoured skeletons.
Well, I think there's some due out very, very soon via Nick at North Star, which are is it Atlantis miniatures?
Oh, these are the ones for a certain, potentially aimed at a certain game system that we will be discussing soon.
Possibly, yes.
Possibly, yes. Okay. Yes. Right. Okay.
Otherwise, there's the Mantic ones, which are very good.
Yeah, but they're armoured.
I think the original ones aren't. Again, Otherworld do some very nice skeletons, which are unarmoured.
Yes.
For the more discerning gamer around town.
Yeah, and of course, the other thing is, gathering together a various selection of ghouls and ghasts for the various types of different ghoul you can get in the game. But yes, talking of which, when we reviewed Rangers of Shadow, and one of the things that we talked about, and one of the things we highlighted right at the start, was this wonderful little phrase in at the start of the rule book, which basically said, because of the way the game was, it was put together, it basically meant that actually, as far as miniatures are concerned, feel free to indulge yourself and dig out all those old fantasy miniatures you've got, or go and find all weird and wonderful and different things to represent your various miniatures.
Yes, I remember that well.
Yes, so do I. Did you spot the news the other week that the aforementioned North Star, funnily enough, I suddenly turned around and said, "Oh, we're going to be producing an official range of Rangers of Shadow Deep miniatures."
Well, it's probably a very good idea, because trying to track down a bunch of flies and bugs and things can be a bit of a pain. So I for one, welcome North Star's entry into Rangers of Shadow Deep. It's just a shame that we've done most of the scenarios now.
Yes, and we've sourced most of the figures
Yes.
alternatively, and let's face it. Does this mean that they will simply be rebranding some of their Frostgrave miniatures as also available for use, or maybe they will have two different boxes, because obviously you can't use your Frostgrave Knolls in Rangers of the Shadowdeep. You have to buy the official Rangers of the Shadowdeep Knolls to use in Rangers of the Shadowdeep. You can't buy.
I think it's a good business practice to get a couple of spoons of novels, shove them into a box with the other bits and bobs you need, and go there. That does your mission too. That's
Now, if they did that, that would be quite friendly. If they kind of basically said, okay, here is a miniature pack for mission 1. Here is a miniature pack for mission 2. If they did it like, I know there's a certain amount of crossover. Yes, I have a spreadsheet that proves that.
I don't doubt it.
Strange, that, isn't it? And then no, I put together this. Funny enough, Halloween. I know a lot of people were interested about where the heck do you get giant flies from. So loads of people have been using Halloween plastic flies, I believe. But yes, yes, I think there was just a little bit of me that kind of put facepalm to forehead on that news, in the kind of, guys, can't we work it out? As opposed to, obviously there is a commercial opportunity there, because I believe Rangers has taken off in a way that people that has taken even Joe somewhat by surprise. Never one to ignore a business opportunity. Is our Nick. And please don't take Nick. Nick is a really nice guy. Nick is a really nice guy, but you do have to. He is an astute businessman.
Yeah,
and it's too right. Yeah, and obviously there is suddenly a gaping. All of a sudden everybody's gone Rangers of Shadowdeep mad, and there's a gaping hole in the miniatures market, and he's gone, "Tell you what, let's fit." Yeah, there was just once where I was just kind of thinking, guys, can we not kind of figure it out for ourselves? Because I must admit, I have really enjoyed, because not being a huge fantasy miniature, that's not really been my thing. I have really enjoyed discovering all sorts of bits and bobs of fantasy miniatures off the back of this thing of, what can I find to represent this? As opposed to just saying, okay, here's the official model, and just using the official model.
Yes, but you have to remember, I can even say it, you have to remember that essentially a lot of wargamers, me included, we're very lazy people. If I got a chance, I could hunt around and buy bits and bobs, and I would enjoy that, and it's a lovely experience. But if I could just go to the shop and buy a box and it's all in there, I'd buy the box.
But you miss the adventure. Think outside the box, Mike. Think outside the box.
Yeah, there. Any other temptations?
No, that's it.
Oh, okay.
How about you?
Okay. There's a couple of temptations. I don't know if I'll pick them up, but thing popped into my head. Nicholas dropped us an email. Let us know about a Kickstarter for some 15mm fantasy figures. And a set of rules called Battle Valor.
La 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 la, not listening.
Yeah.
Not listening.
15mm. Now, luckily, I do fantasy in 10mm or 28mm, so I'm not going down the route to doing 15mm. But they look lovely. So, and we'll possibly put the link into the show notes if we remember.
Oh, hang on a second. 15mm fantasy, you say? I believe, if I'm not mistaken, a kind of 100 Years War fantasy themed Kickstarter in 15 mil is landing in people. It will be landing on people's doorsteps in the non too distant future. Perhaps these figures would wonderfully complement them.
Possibly, if you need any more figures after you bought Joan of Arc. But yeah, there was that, and also one which you might be interested in: Battleground Fantasy Warfare. Remember the old card system?
I backed it before it got cancelled, mate.
Yeah. Well, it's back.
Yeah, yes, they're reprinting Men of Hawks.
They are, yeah. New imagery, and I think it's been taken over by a new company.
I think they have found new production partners. It is the same game designers, but I believe they are operating in production with. Yeah, because interestingly, because this is a restarted Kickstarter, they originally launched this because I put a blog post about it a couple of months ago, and they canned it after about a week. The main reason I backed it at the time, funnily enough, because I wanted to get or see if you could get hold of a copy of the other battleground historical warfare.
Yeah, those are included in
stuff that I hadn't got.
Are included in this one as well.
Yeah, because I've got the Punic Wars one, but they were also doing, I think it's Persians and Macedonians.
It is.
And I was thinking that it would be really good to get those because, hey, couldn't you play an Ancients game with just? I know it sounds it's a crazy idea, but don't you think you could play a game perhaps on a grid with that needs elements, and because it's all pre-printed, it's all there, it's all available. Yeah. So that's what I was thinking. But it's back, baby.
It is back.
And I believe they are revising the rules and all sorts of stuff. So yeah.
It looks like it's a complete pick it up, shake it out a bit, and get it back out. So yeah, so that looks quite interesting. I mean, I've looked at it often times, like yourself. And
I do own most of it.
Yeah, it could be fun. Yeah,
I do own the vast majority of it from the first time round. I think I'm missing. What am I missing? I think I was missing the Dark Elves because they were a later faction.
Yeah.
So I think I was missing the Dark Elves, and I might have been missing the primitive tribes, but I believe I've got most of everything else. But I would be interested to see. I would be interested to see the new rules.
Yes, I think you can download the new rules and have a look at them, and the quick start rules from the Kickstarter. So let's see what they got in there. So they got the reprint of the Men of Hawkshold, or what it's called, Hawkshold, and then you can get the old cards, which are the Dwarves of Runegard, which you probably got, Lizard Men, High Elves, Orcs. Elves of Ravenwood. Yeah. Something Tribesman, which I can't read.
Yeah, it was the Tribesman I haven't got. Ulanti Tribesman.
That's right, yeah. Undead.
Yeah.
Wutans, looks like Japanese or Chinese.
Oh yeah, that's the other faction. Wutai. That's the other faction I haven't got.
And then
because they came out after the Dark Elves.
Yeah, and then there's monsters. So yeah, it looks like it.
Yeah, Monsters and Mercenaries includes dragons and stuff. It's great.
Yeah, so there we go. So that's on Kickstarter now, and we'll be there until 28 days to go from today, which is the 24th. So,
cool.
Yeah, middle to the end of May. So, I might
Yeah.
jump in,
They
on, and pick a couple.
They were. I mean, to be honest, they were. I mean, there was something a bit different. But they were a nice little set of rules. And of course, the big thing is because they're on. It's all on card. Essentially, you buy 2 packs and you've got 2 huge armies in your pocket. And yeah, makes it great. If nothing else, for things like any sort of element based war game that you want to play,
just try it out.
You've got pocket armies. You got pocket armies and all. Yeah, it's there. You got forces to play with and all sorts. It's great, really good.
So that's my temptations.
Cool, excellent stuff. Right. Well, in that case, then we'll take a quick break, and when we come back. Ooh, hobby time. Hobby time. Hi everyone, Neil here. I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Meeples and Miniatures podcast. If you are, I'm wondering, would you consider becoming a patron of the show? For as little as $1 a month, you can help support us in what we're doing with the show. For that, you can get access to a monthly question and answer show. That will also allow you to ask questions. If you pledge more, you potentially get bonus podcasts. And you never know, you might even get invited to be on the show yourself. If you want to know more details, please follow the link to our Patreon page, which is on the front of the website. That's www.meeplesandminiatures.co.uk. Thanks a lot. Okay, here we are, and it's time to catch up on hobby stuff. Wow. It has been busy. Actually, in both households. Probably slightly busier in the Hobbs household, to be fair, but shock and indeed horror.
Yeah.
All I will say on my front, hobby wise, okay, playing games,
usual stuff.
Well, most usual stuff. Although, one thing I will say is that for everything that is all the cult of the new, as a lot of this hobby is the cult of the new, and I'll talk about especially board gaming like that as well. Yeah, it seems to be all about the cult of the new. It is nice and refreshing when you discover a game that is a really good game, and then you discover it was written like 12 years ago. Right. You may remember back in the dim, distant past.
Well, about 12 years ago.
Well, no.
Okay.
A bit sooner than
Sorry
that.
about that.
But there was one Christmas where the Works bookshop in the UK managed to get hold of a job lot of Rio Grande.
Oh, I remember you talking about this, and you went mental.
Certainly, I went slightly mental. Mr. Luff went hugely mental on this and got tons. Yeah. And there have been some sat on his shelf ever since that had never been played. One of which we got out this week in the light of events that had happened. That being a game called Notre Dame, written in 2007. Fun enough, it's a game about it's kind of like a worker placement type game. You'll promote. Basically, it's based around 14th century Paris, surrounding the cathedral, and basically you're attempting to promote everything to do with your your own followers, whilst at the same time attempting to try not to die of plague.
Well, that's good.
That's good, yes. It's a game that's 12 years old. We played it for the first time and actually went, wow, this is a really good game. That's the point I was trying to make, is actually, at the end of the day, it's a really good game. So just because the artwork is a bit more of its time, and it has a particular look and feel to kind of medieval France about it, but it's a really good game. Cool. So played that. The unusual stuff that I played, we have played a couple of games of Batman Gotham City Chronicles, which was something I wanted to mention. Batman. Right, so this is some would say the re-implementation of the Conan mechanic with a new theme, the theme of the Batman DC universe. Josh backed it on Kickstarter. It arrived I think we mentioned it had arrived, but we hadn't had a chance to play it yet. We've now had a chance to have a couple of games, and can report back that we played it at the UK Games Expo. Well, yeah, I think it was last year. Maybe even the year before.
Oh yeah, you played it, didn't you?
Yeah, we got to play it, and actually, it might have been 2 years ago. Anyway, cracking game.
It was last year. You played it when I was role playing.
Ah, right. Okay, so it must have been it must have been last year then. Right. Okay. So yes, an excellent implementation. They have certainly done a job and learnt lessons from what they did with Conan. The production values are excellent. They've really upped their game on things like, so for example, the player boards are now much better. They're embossed, so you have areas to put these cubes now rather than gems.
Yeah.
But they're you've got embossed areas to put things. The overlords, they've redone the overlords, kind of master area for where, and that is just a thing of beauty. But they've done an excellent production job. The rules have been updated.
Mm-hmm.
New dice, which basically gives an extension to weaponry, especially since they're using a lot of ranged weapons.
Yeah.
And munitions. So you've got a bit of a wider range. At the moment, you use black and white dice, which gives you extra options as far as your dice mix of weaponry and what have you. One of the really interesting things is that they've worked well on the scenarios. Again, the game is very scenario driven. Interestingly, they as part of the Kickstarter, they have produced a skirmish, or what they call the Versus version. Now, interestingly, what they've done with that, I'll come back to scenarios in a second, but what they've done with the Versus version is that essentially what happens is that both people effectively play as an overlord.
Yeah.
And that's really interesting. So that's quite so rather than playing everybody plays player boards, no, you both play with overlord boards. And I believe they're looking to retrospectively fit that back into Conan. I believe that's the kind of that was I know they mentioned it.
Yeah.
Anyway, one of the things that was perhaps maybe a criticism of Conan was that the scenarios written for Conan had been written with one specific set of heroes in mind. And then if you wanted to use different heroes, it was very much a case of, well, suck it and see, but there was no guarantee how balanced it was going to be.
Yeah, that's right.
One thing they've done in Batman is that they say, right, you have three heroes, for example, and then for each hero, they give you 2 or 3 options. They say, right, okay, hero 1 can be this, or this. Hero 2 can be this or this. Hero 3 can be this or this.
Okay. Yeah.
Which I think makes life better because it just gives you a lot more options in it, and it aids replayability. And I'd say we've played it a couple of times now. 2 close games. I think the first game came down to the last die roll. The second game, I think there's a slight issue around the scenario design, that it could have been written in a slightly different way to be, to kind of lead the players through it a little bit more, as opposed to actually providing information up front, which ultimately is confusing.
Yeah.
Anyway, but initial thoughts or initial impressions, really, really good. Now, why am I talking a lot about this? Basically because, okay, remember Batman was a Kickstarter exclusive. Monolith decided that they were not going to bring it to retail because they couldn't afford to take the drop in money if they took on board distribution. But basically they turned around and said, if we took on board distribution and put it to retail, we'd have to essentially increase the cost by 100%.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
So they decided, because obviously, let's face it, it's an official DC Batman license, guys. These things are not going to be cheap. But anyway, the reason I'm saying all this is because they are reprinting the game. There's a Kickstarter on I believe it's the 4th of June for a reprint. And they're also going to be putting in some new expansions. But it's something that is definitely worth a look. If you liked Conan, but you want something a bit different, and especially if you happen to be a comic book fan, and let's face it, you've got to be a DC comic book fan. This is why Josh got it. Conan, he enjoys the game, but Conan does nothing for Josh. Batman, on the other hand, he's a complete DC nerd.
Mm-hmm.
So he just went, oh, I'm all over it. So that's why it really appealed to him. But if you happen to be a fan, then I think it is definitely worth checking out. So that's the other thing we played. Batman, Gotham City Chronicles. Well worth a look. Okay, advert over.
Cool.
Right. So that's what I've been playing. And I just thought I'd get that in there. Anyway, right. So, because we did actually talk about, can we review this? And Mike kind of went, yeah, but it's not available for main sale. So, can we really review a game that isn't going to be available for sale? And we decided that no, instead I'll just talk about it a bit. Right, okay.
The old us would have done, but we've matured.
Yeah, perhaps, yes, at least but as I say, yeah, certainly, it's one of these things where with hindsight and recommendation, if they're reprinting it, it's worth a look, guys. They have done a cracking job on it. Seriously, the production quality is top notch. It is the artwork and all the stuff. It's stonking. It is even the miniatures. They've done a cracking job with all the miniatures. As I say, when you got things like, if you happen to be doing anything in like modern America and wanted like cops or SWAT guys or thugs or what have you, you could, and you didn't have anything, it'd be worth getting hold of. Forget the superhero side, it'd be worth getting hold of for that. But anyway, by the by, right. I've been painting, guys.
You have been. Now, before you get into painting, do you need to go and have a quick cold shower before you come back?
No.
Okay.
I'll be
fine.
Fine. I'll be fine. Yes, I have come down from my evangelical perch. Yes, I'm fine. Right. Okay. So, all I'll say is that yes, I have been painting. My painting mojo has returned after A few days in the doldrums, it has to be said, following. Start of the month was just, I kind of stalled on my first batch of gnolls. My second batch of gnolls was there, and I'd started it and then kind of went, but basically the as of this moment in time, I have finished all the main painting. I'm currently I'm currently halfway through basing, so which basically means I am doing the dry brushing, having applied sand and what have you. So I'm doing the dry brushing bit, and then I've got flocking and flocking and static grass to do, and then my basing formula is because we haven't really talked much about this. But my basing formula is especially if I've got miniatures with raised bases, with integral bases. I'll use some household filler just to kind of mould that in with the rest of the base. I'll then apply sharp sand with PVA glue, let that dry. I'll then paint it in a dark brown colour. The colour I found was brilliant. It was some Wilco's. It was Wilco's Java bean, which is it's almost like a bitter chocolate colour. However, I'm now reliably informed that they've discontinued that colour, which is gutting because I've only got one pot left. So I've got to find something else. So I'll probably end up buying burnt umber or something, because it's a similar sort of colour. And then I tried dry brushing it with several different colours, and ended up thinking that actually at the end of the day, you could do 3 or 4 colours, but actually one is perfectly fine because you're covering half the base in flock anyway. Flock and static grass anyway. So I just dry brush with a sandstone colour to pick out all the little rocks and details, and then I will apply flock into various areas. And it's very much a case of what kind of looks good on the model, and then that's kind of I treat it almost like a mossy base, if you like, and then in the middle of each piece of flock, I'll pop in some static grass. I'm not one, especially on rank and file, I'm not one for using tufts and flowers. Not my style at all. I'm going to use that on things like something like bows and badges, for example. I'll be using lots of tufts and flowers, but I don't normally use tufts and flowers. I just want to go for a very bog standard. Okay, that's kind of my basing. So that's where I am, and so hopefully that will mean that by this weekend I'll have finished 27 gnolls and 2 hyenas this month. Plus a wizard apprentice, who is it's one of the plastic. It's one of the wizards from the Plastic Wizards box set, because Dave wanted an Arcanist as a companion, because he would have to go and choose something different. So there we were. Because a dog isn't good enough, or a young Ranger apprentice or something. No. I want something different. He wants an Arcanist. So so we'll put that together for him. So there we are. So about 30 figures. I am reasonably chuffed. And the interesting thing with that, I was again, I've used the same method that I used with the zombies, in that it was very much a case of, right, I chose 3 different flesh colours. Because gnolls have red hair, I chose 3 different red browns for the hair, mixed them all up, and then all the clothing was different shades of brown. And just don't go there, because it got very, very. One thing I discovered during this process, I discovered that I actually own over 40 different shades of brown, or at least different pots of paint in the brown spectrum. And most of them are varying shades. I mean, there were a couple which, okay, they're different paint manufacturers, and you put them together and they're almost the same. But yeah, I own over 40 different browns.
Okay.
There we go. So yeah, loads of different colour brown, and then strong tone wash, and I have left it at that. It's really interesting. I was listening to the Lardy Oddcast, was it episode 16 that they discussed painting. Funny enough, while I've been painting that this month, and listening to their various painting techniques, and listening to the fact that even Rich, who turns around and says, "I hate painting," he then starts talking about the level of detail he goes to on highlighting and various other bits and pieces, despite the fact that he hates painting. You know what? I turned around and said, "Rich, mate, I think I therefore probably hate painting even more than you do, because on rank and file stuff, if it looks fine after it's washed, I'm done. That's it. Sorted. Thank you very much. On to the next thing." And so that's what I've done with the Knolls, and they look, even though I was saying myself, perfectly presentable, quite happy with them. Thank you very much. Next.
Well, that's what can I say? Right. I'll try and be a bit quicker, because we're still going to do 2 reviews. Okay, so hobby side. Well, Virtual Grog Meet occurred, which is a online role-playing meetup, shall we say. It's an affiliation of the official Grog Meet, which is run by Dirk de Dykes and co from the Grognard Files. So I took part in that, and I had 2 games. First of all, I played Barbarians of Luminera, which was huge fun. It's a good rompy, simple system. That was run by Neil Benson. That was great fun. We enjoyed that. Played that with a few friends, some listeners of the show. So Jeremy was on there. Hello, Jeremy. And then in the evening, I played a new game system which has been written, which is called King of Dungeons, yes, which is written by Baz from the Smart Party 2 podcast. It's has a sort of D&D-esque style to it. It's very narrative. It's very fast-flowing. It gets crunchy during combat, which means combat. You can spend a bit of time in combat, but the rest of the game is all about telling the story, and it's got a nice background. And played that with Simon, the old Goat Major, and a few others. Hello,
cool.
Simon.
Bumped into Simon at Salute. Hello, Simon.
Yeah, we had a blast. So that was Virtual Grog Meet. I then travelled to the Eagle's Nest in Lavonva, and meet myself and Jeff from Caerphilly. Hello, Jeff. Went to see Tougher Jeff in Lavonva. Hello, Jeff. Hello, Jeff doesn't listen to the podcast, so I don't want to send over to him. And we played The Men Who Would Be Kings.
Oh, wow.
So we did a bit of a colonial game set in Africa, which Jeff put on with his lovely sets of figures.
Yes, it has to be said. His colonial figures are resplendent.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Boy, that bloke can paint white really well.
Well, actually, the figures we use are all painted by Gareth from ADC Painting.
Oh, okay.
So they're just as good. But yeah, that was good fun. Nice, interesting set of rules. Nice, it's lightweight. It's a a sort of Dan Mersey style game. But yeah, it was functional and they played and we had a good laugh and you can't ask for more. A nice way to spend a Friday evening with your mates playing games.
Excellent stuff. Excellent stuff.
And then we played Rangers last night. So we did the Blood Moon scenario, which again was huge fun.
Yes, lots of big scary monsters by the look of things.
There was a few werewolves pop up at various times, and large snakes and things. But yeah, a great game. Really enjoyed that. So
good.
That's the gaming side of things. Painting. Well, it's all been Greek around here, Neil.
You shock me.
So I'm going to be honest with you. Mortal Gods has got me into doing Greeks. I've always wanted to do Greeks in 28mm.
Yeah.
But I really can't face doing 70 or 80 figures aside. You know, like far too short. There's a lot of bronze and there's a lot of shield transfers. But, 24 aside is doable. So I've done the Spartan set, which is my first faction. So there's 20, I think it's 26 of those in total. And I'm just starting on the ones from...
Because there's more than that in the box, isn't there?
No, in the Spartan box you get...
Oh, is it 30? Is it 29, 29?
No, in the Spartan box you get 19.
Okay.
You get which is enough. You get a sprue of the armoured hoplites, sprue of the unarmoured ones, and 3 metals to give you... Basically, you get enough for 6 groups of 3, plus a leader type for them. So I did have a bit of a mix around because some of the... pardon me. One of the unarmoured metals I want to keep for another faction, so I stole one from the core set, shall we say, to give me the 9. Right. So I did those, and I'm just started my second faction, which is using the figures from the core set. And I've decided, so Annie from Bad Spirit of Games. Hello, Annie. She doesn't listen.
Hi.
She's moved on from us now. She's produced 3 very nice Amazon figures, which I thought would be really good as leaders for a sort of semi-mythological styly faction using the figures from the core box primarily, and all of the lighter troops I can just paint up, sort of generically, and they can be used in other factions anyway. But I've made a start on those, so I've done 8 of those, and I'm halfway through the Annie's Amazons. I also decided to paint a god from Mythic Battles. Yeah,
I noticed that.
It would be nice to have like a god for each of my factions that I could leave on the side as a sort of mascot. And also, the figures from Mythic Battles are lush.
Oh.
Yeah. So I painted Ares, and Annie turned out really well. I'm really pleased with him. And then lastly, over the weekend, in the sunshine, I've painted up the Lost Shores Oracle Shrine from Fenris Games, which I bought just before my birthday. And that turned up nice and speedily. Thank you, Fenris. It is gorgeous, Neil. It is absolutely,
nice,
absolutely beautiful. So you get 4 large pieces of resin, which it's like a round base, and then there's 3 plinths to go around it. And then you get 6 bags of pillar bits, which you can glue together. So what I've done is I've done the 3 big plinths with various little raised bits on them, pillars and stuff. And then I got some old CDs and I stuck some pillars onto those and some old MDF bases, which I scoured, and I made them into little sort of scattery terrain. and they came out really nice. Really simple to paint. I just sprayed them all with army paint to desert yellow, put it outside because it was 25 degrees. 10 minutes later, took it in and gave it a spray of bone. Took it outside, gave it 10 minutes, gave the whole thing a wash of army paint strong tone, left it for 10 minutes in the sun, and then I dry brushed it with Vallejo buff. And you're pretty much done.
Cool.
A little bit of flock here and there on the bigger pieces just to break it up. And yeah, that was it done. So that's me really. Or do you want my classic basing technique? Oh, you don't
No,
want that,
actually,
do you?
I'm interested.
No, you've hurt my feelings now.
I was going to ask you how you painted bronze. What is your colour what is your technique? Considering you are trailblazing for me, because I've still got all this to go.
What's on these sort of standard Greek hoplite colours? Because I'll be honest, I've got various techniques for painting goldy, metallic-y, bronzy colours. So the simple one is foundry gold. I use the mid and the light tone. So I start with a black undercoat. I'll give it the patented matte slate, Hello Matte, Vallejo flat brown wet brush over the top, because that gives you a lovely base for gold and for flesh. And let's be honest, they're Greeks. They're mostly flesh or gold color, with a bit of cloth here and there. But do all that, and then I use the foundry gold mid over the top of that. Leave it to dry. Give it a highlight with the light color, the light gold. Leave it to dry, and then I use soft tone. I paint a soft tone over the lot, quite light. Leave it to dry, and you're done. Doesn't go. If I
cool.
For my for the gods I did for Aries, I went for a different color scheme, which is a much darker. I wanted to go for like an older, darker, bronzy color, which was I went for. He says, looking at his list of notes of colors. Yeah, I've got about 40 notepads, documents for each one. So I used my Lucid Eye one, which was base coat of Vallejo Old Gold, and then over the top of that, there's a scale color called Negro Gold. So use that as a highlight. Scale 75.
Scale 75, yeah.
And then I use Army Painter Purple Wash over the top of that. And then finish it off with, but it works.
Unusual.
And then I use Old Gold again as a light dry brush just to pick up the details. So there's that one. And for the ones I did for the heroes, for Annie's heroes, I used P3 colours for that. So I used P3 Molten Bronze as a base, highlight that with Runic Gold in P3, and then a very, very light dry brush of Vallejo Gold, because it's quite bright, and I give that a sepia wash.
Yeah.
And that's that.
Cool. Excellent stuff.
That's okay.
Thank you, Michael.
I'll send you a list of what I do. But for basic hoplites, the foundry gold, mid and high highlight and soft tone, and he's done.
Excellent stuff. Excellent stuff indeed. Well, there we go.
So you do all my basing tips then.
So how do you?
Yeah.
Well, you use tea leaves.
Should we leave it there? We'll cover it next time.
Yes, we'll come back to it.
In the meantime,
we'll come back
folks,
to it next month. We'll come back to it next month. Yes.
Yes. They come in bags.
Collect tea leaves, indeed. Yes.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Yep.
Bags with tea in them.
First
Who'd have
make
thought?
20 cups of tea, save in the bags, and dry them in a conservatory or somewhere warm.
Mind you, you lost me at tea and bag. You have to be, anyway,
Oh.
yeah, by the way. Right, okay. On that note, we'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll be revealing all, if we hadn't revealed it already, as far as the rules we are reviewing for this show. The Meeples and Miniatures podcast is pleased for the continued sponsorship of Firestorm Games. One of the next major events at the South Wales Gaming Centre is the Spring Bring and Buy, which is on Saturday the 11th of May. Doors will open at 10 AM and there will be a number of tabletop sale available with loads of gamers bringing along their unwanted tabletop gaming goods. Always a bargain available, so well worth going along. As well as the tabletop sale, there will also be demo games available. I believe these will be by TT Combat, Foreground and Great Escape Games. So you'll be able to play games such as Carnivale, 7 Days to the Rhine and World War Zero. So, big event on Saturday the 11th of May. As I say, doors open at 10 AM and it's free entry for the Bring and Buy on that day. Well worth going. You can always pick up a bargain. And don't forget that as part of our sponsorship, Firestorm Games very kindly offer an extra discount for all listeners to the Meeples and Miniatures podcast. This is available either in store or online. Simply enter the code, the new code for May and June, which will be Mayday Meeple. Mayday Meeple, all one word, all lowercase. And that will give you an extra 5% discount on your goods. Remember, if you order over £40 worth of goods, you will be eligible for free postage. Although, dependent on some items, that may vary, especially if your postage is going outside of the UK. Worth checking on the website for those details. That code again, Mayday Meeple. Thank you once again to Firestorm Games for your continued support. So here we are with as we start on our we continue on our Greek theme since Mike has gone all al fresco on his on his painting this week.
It's all Greek to me.
Indeed, it is, and it's yes, we've had the weather for it. So yes, we are. In the first part, we are looking at skirmishy type of games. Okay, so this is low figure count. Okay, 2 in particular we are looking at. 1 primarily historical, 1 a bit more fantastical. Okay.
And I bet you can't guess what they are.
Oh, well, strangely enough, they contain the same words.
They do, actually.
They do, indeed. Okay, so first off, we're going to be looking at the game that is, yes, one of the flavours of the month, and obviously one that that both of us picked up in the last month, and which is, of course, Mortal Gods, the latest game from the company that is now known as Futsal Miniatures and Games, and of course is not Warbanner as it says on the box, due to reasons that we discussed last time.
Yeah.
On the show, but yes, so Futsal Miniatures and Games have produced Mortal Gods, which they've kind of been talking about for about a year, and I got involved in some of the early playtesting. They did three playtest days, I think it was, at Balls and Swords Hobbies in Derby. They're two open playtest days, and then they did another day where they were kind of finalising and finishing things off. But I got involved in one of those. So we'll be discussing Mortal Gods, and then we'll be going on to another set of rules which we will reveal shortly.
Indeed.
So, Mortal Gods. First off, it has to be said, comes in probably one of the flimsiest boxes I've known for like a big game for a while. I mean, oh my word! I mean, is it me or is it? It almost seems that the paper, the quality of the paper they have used in the rulebook is obviously superior quality to the cardboard that they have used in the construction of the box.
Yes, but it's kind of a short-term thing because the box contains a load of plastic sprues which you're going to put together into figures, the rule book, and a few bits of card and dice and loads of cards, and yeah, it is a bit flimsy.
Yeah, it's got loads of cards. Yeah. I mean, the idea, it would have been because I mean, the test of honor box, picking a game at random. For some unknown reason, but the test of honor box. At least it was a case of once you got all the miniatures out, the figure sprues out of the box, you could actually use the box to store all the rest of the stuff in it. I really wouldn't like to do that with Mortal Gods, but that was just a kind of a bit of a by the by. But it was like when I got it, I was like, I kind of picked it up, and you kind of picked it up, and the whole box kind of goes wibble.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, fine, right.
And it is quite a big box.
Yeah, that's the thing. I couldn't quite get over. It's like it's a huge box to be that flexible because it's got a lot of stuff in it.
But anyway, let's get back to the game. Back to the rules, Neil.
Yes, very nice rule book. Very well produced rule book. Really nice. Very impressed with that.
So.
Lovely artwork by Peter Dennis.
Indeed, you can't go wrong with a bit of Peter Dennis.
No.
So let's cover the basics. Levels of scale, what size table, how many miniatures, and what else do you need? Go.
Right. Okay. So, it is aimed at the classic, or the now classic, skirmish scale 3 foot by 3 foot table. On average, somewhere between 15 to 25 miniatures a side. We have scale. It is aimed at 28mm. You could change the scale should you so wish. It's aimed. It's produced with 28mm in mind. Actually, the miniatures that come in the box are by Victrix, so they're all Victrix. The Victrix plastic range. Victrix did a big range of plastics for ancient Greece. I think they did. I think it's about 5 boxes. I think it was different miniatures, and basically they've done you've got a selection of stuff. Okay, so in the box, you have enough models to do a small faction, or 2 small factions, or 1 standard faction, for want of a better phrase. However, you do get lots of cards because all the units and individual heroes need a card. These cards are used they're like recruitment cards used for building your armies. They also have all your unit stats on them. So you do need the cards in order to play the game.
Yeah.
Okay. You also have, it also includes sets of custom dice. Very nice sets of custom dice.
You've got to have the custom dice. Again, yeah.
You've got to have the custom dice, and they have done a very nice job, and thank goodness they are a sensible size. More of which in a second. But they're very nicely produced. You actually got two different sorts of custom dice. You've got battle dice and you've got damage dice, but we'll come to that in a minute. Other than that,
you get the measuring sticks. There's 2 measuring sticks in it.
yes, yeah. I mean, yeah. They're 2 measuring sticks, but basically, you need something that measures inches.
Yeah.
They include a couple of measuring sticks, but as long as you've got a tape measure that's got inches on it, you're fine. They do also include some custom unit basings. Now, these are for groups of miniatures. There are 2 different types. There are round 60mm bases, and then there are some triangular bases, each of which hold 3 miniatures. And these are used for representing groups in the small groups of miniatures in the game. They're included, and you can buy sets separately from Sarissa.
Mm-hmm.
They actually do separate basing sets that you can purchase separately if you already have some Greek figures that you want to use for the game. Other than that,
Counters.
Pardon?
The counters, the pips to pull out of the.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yes, it comes with counters now. Rather than card counters, they have produced. They actually have little.
They're like beads, aren't they?
Beads.
Like
Funny enough, very similar to the sort of beads that you get in Gangs of Rome.
Or gems, I think they're called. Yeah.
Gems, yes, but yes. They are incredibly reminiscent of the sort of stuff that you potentially get in Gangs of Rome. Also produced by aforementioned company. So good reuse of stuff there. But yeah, no card counters in this or what have you. Now, the one thing you will need is some sort of opaque receptacle in which to pick the beads out of, which is not supplied in the game. So you will need either a cup or a dice bag of some description. Okay. And then some scenery.
Yeah.
Okay. Obviously it's ancient Greece, so some kind of Greeky themed scenery would be good. So that's basically it. So quite a low figure count. So put it this way: if you had a faction which had and you wanted all your options available, you could probably get away with painting no more than 40 figures, and that would include loads of different options for heroes, different types of light troops that you're using in the game, etc. So, yeah, no more than 40, but yeah, the actual figure count for a standard warband is around about 20-ish.
Yeah. Okay, so how do you put your armies together then?
Integral to the game is the fact that you have unit cards, okay, and these define your troops. Now you can have individuals. And not just individual. You can have heroes. You have a leader. You have to have one leader who is called a logos. No,
something like that. Logos.
Something like that. Yeah. And you are allowed. And in a standard build, you are allowed him and one other hero. Now that hero could be another warrior. It could be somebody else. It could be something like a musician, for example, or maybe a seer, or a healer. So there are other options available. However, all those base cards are in the game, and then you have your troops. Those are divided essentially into 2 different classes of troops. You have your hoplites, and you have your Pisoli, or however you pronounce that word.
Yeah.
I believe I may be saying it wrong, but hey ho. Basically, hoplites and other light troops. Okay.
You've essentially got close order troops and open order troops.
Yes. And your hoplites, you have two different types. You either have which are basically either heavy or medium. And that basically refers to the type of armor they're wearing, and it's effectively whether or not they're wearing breastplates. And then for light troops, you have archers, slingers, and peltasts.
Pretty much, yeah.
Pretty much, and that's pretty much it. There are promises of other things coming along, such as mounted troops, and then a few other faction specific stuff. And there are some faction specific stuff already. When we were in the modelling section, Michael was already talking about some faction specific stuff for Spartans, for example. But the basic faction. Okay, so each of these troop types have a card. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, you can either recruit individuals or you can recruit groups. Now, a group is 3 models. Okay. Now, if this sounds at all familiar, it's the base mechanics. It is similar in many ways to Test of Honor. Okay, so if people are thinking groups of 3 and various other bits and pieces, cards, what have you, yeah, that's where its basis lies, and then it kind of moves off from that. Okay, so what happens? So you can either recruit individual models or you can recruit groups. Okay, if you recruit groups, they tend to be slightly cheaper in their recruitment costs. Basically, you have a number of cards that you can choose.
Yeah.
On that card is a cost for that unit or for that miniature. Okay, and you have either in your scenario, either in the game you're playing or the scenario that you're playing, you have a points limit that can be made up of not only of troops, it can also be made up of extra equipment that you or equipment that you have, something called gifts. So that's basically abilities that you can give to your heroes or your leader. Perhaps extra weaponry. So you could potentially have a situation where you have a hero and rather cowardly equip him with a bow. But who on earth would do something like that? But anyway, so you can do things like that. So again, it's a points-based system, but it's all on the cards. So it's really simple to do. So it's all about sorting through how your units go together. Now, one of the big changes from Test of Honor that you need to think that you need to think about is this question on close order troops. Okay. There are, as I mentioned earlier, there are 2 different types of bases in the game. There is the standard 60mm round base that holds 3 miniatures. And then there is something that is used for hoplites. And now these are triangular. Okay? But they still hold 3 miniatures. Now these are used so that you can put your troops into formation. Which has been loosely called, air quotes here, a phalanx.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, Andy has already said, because we had this discussion at the time, he says, I know it isn't a phalanx because it's only 9 miniatures. It's basically you put 3 bases together and it produces a formation. But it's like, it's a formation of hoplites. So what are you going to call it?
Yeah, exactly.
So he turned around and said, it's a phalanx. Yes, I know it's not a proper phalanx, but you kind of know where you're coming from. Okay, so basically, your close order troops can be formed into a formation using a particular maneuver in the game, and so the triangular bases are actually designed in such a way that you can tessellate them, and therefore it creates
The,
the formation
yes,
of troops.
the illusion of a large formation. Yeah, and there is actually a card for those formations. So if you've got, say, for example, hoplites, it'll say that they can form up into a single group with two other groups of hoplites, and then there's a sort of phalanx card. So basically, you get your 3 cards for each of your hoplite groups and put them on top of the phalanx card, which then gives you extra sort of stats for that because they're in that particular.
Yeah, it's really clever in the fact of actually, forming up gives you bonuses, but it also makes you less maneuverable, for example. But it does give you bonuses for being in formation. So you get, it's an advantage, but you also like for example, you become incredibly vulnerable to attacks from your flank or rear. But you are very good to your front. And but another interesting thing is that your hoplites don't all have to be of the same type. You can have a mixed formation of heavy and medium hoplites in the same formation, and depending on which is the more prevalent, basically
that's the stats. Yeah,
that determines whether you have a medium phalanx or a heavy phalanx. Simple as that, Essentially, whichever is the majority, that's what you end up with.
Okay, so we've got our army together. Turn sequence.
Right, okay, so...
There's a bag, you say?
There is a bag, yes. So essentially what happens is that every card that you have in your army, okay, now ignore the fact that you have this potentially phalanx for now. That will come into it. We'll come into that in a minute. But every unit card that you have in your army has at least one activation point. Okay. What you tend to find is that heroes and commanders have multiple activations. Units, troops tend to have single activations per card. Okay, so, and dependent on whether you are unit or a hero, you have a different colour bead. Okay, so you work out from your cards how many beads of units and heroes, the different colours, you need for your force. Your opponent does the same. Okay, so you get all those beads, you put them all together, and you stick them in a bag. Okay, and I think, is it black and white? I know it is black and white.
It is black and white. Yeah, so it's white for units and black for heroes. But if you
black for heroes,
I was going to say, if you have got troops in a phalanx, you only put one bead in.
Yeah, well, hang on. Yeah, hang on one second. Right, yes. Depends. Right, okay. It depends if you start in formation or not.
Yes.
Basically, right. You can move in and out of phalanx formation. Okay. Now remember, a phalanx can only be formed by 3 individual units of hoplites. Okay, and it has to be 3. As soon as you lose a unit, that phalanx is broken. Okay, you can't have a phalanx consisting of 2 units.
Well, some of them can. Actually, you can have some. Some of the special ones will say it can form a phalanx with 1 more unit.
Oh, okay.
That's in the start. But generally, you have 3 bases.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, yes. Yeah. Okay, special rules in the Spartans. Which I'm sorry, I haven't read that bit yet. No. However, and especially with the way the bases are designed, because essentially the bases are designed so you have, remember, 3 triangles tessellated together. You have 2 flat edges and 1 point to the front. Okay, so your frontage is wider at the front than it is at the back. Yes?
Yes.
So the idea being is that you have flanks that point inwards and away from the enemy, and you present a wider frontage to the, a wider frontage to the enemy. Okay, so that's the way it's kind of designed, right? Okay, but if you start in that, when you enter that formation has one card and therefore one bead. If it is separated into individual units, you have 3 units, therefore 3 beads.
Yeah. So you drop another couple of beads into the bag.
Or take them out, depending on if you're moving into formation or coming out of formation.
Yeah.
Okay? And that's something that's dynamic that happens during the game.
Yeah, I think you can only... Yeah, you can only do that in the last phase, which is the housekeeping phase.
Right, okay. That's a change. Okay, that was okay. That's a detailed change because when we play tested it, sorry, this is something I've obviously missed in the rules. When we play tested it, when you made the formation, the first thing that one of the 3 units had to do was to make the formation.
Yeah,
that was the first thing that was the activation, was we are forming phalanx, and that was the first. You couldn't activate one unit and then another unit would say, "Okay, I'm activating and we're forming phalanx." Yeah, the phalanx had to be with 3 units that hadn't previously been activated, and then you do the house. Okay, so that may have changed.
Yeah.
Okay, right. So anyway, you end up with a number of beads in the bag. Okay, and then essentially you take and add to that you had 3 red beads. Okay, the 3 red beads represent the fates. Okay, so what will happen is that you will take it in turns, passing the bag between you and pulling out coloured beads. When you pull out a bead of a particular colour, that activates a unit. If it's a white, it's a warrior unit. If it's a red, it's a hero.
No, black is hero.
Sorry. Yes. If it's black, I was ahead of myself. If it was black, it's a hero. Okay, and you pass it backwards and forwards. If you ever end up in a situation where you have activated all your heroes, and then you pull a black bead out, you give it to your opponent, they activate their hero, and then you give them the bag.
Yes.
So you effectively lose your activation because you basically pulled out too many of one colour. So it's a backwards and forwards activate. It's a alternate figure or unit activation. However, heroes can be activated, and potentially some units can be activated multiple times, which is a really clever mechanic. The other thing is, and this is where that wonderful friction comes in. During the turn, as you can appreciate, you can also pull 3 red beads out. Okay, whenever you pull a red bead out, the first twice you pull red beads out, this is where the fates come into play. And the first bead you draw out, you draw a fate card from the fates deck, and this brings a special effect into the battle. Okay, and this is anything. This could be anything. This could be a bonus to a particular side, a bonus to a particular unit, a bonus to a particular hero, or perhaps a negative to a particular unit. Basically, it's the gods rolling the dice and affecting you, affecting your units or your opponent's units or both of you in particular ways.
Yeah.
So, right, okay. So the first time the fates come out and something happens. The second time you pull a red token out, that effect disappears and is over. And then the third time you pull a red bead out, that ends a turn immediately.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if you've only activated half your units. That's it. That's the end of the turn. And at that point, everything that's still alive, you put beads back in the box, and it's the next turn. And whoever pulled the last bead out, the last red bead out, becomes first player.
And I do at this point, Neil, have to give you an apology. Because I've just reading the rules again, and you can form up as an action. You unform in the housekeeping phase. You can form up in the thing. So I'm very sorry, Neil. I doubted you.
Oh my word! Oh my word! They haven't changed they haven't changed that bit during playtesting. Right. Apologies if I misremember some of these rules, because it was definitely a case of we playtested and then they went back and went, "Oh no, we're changing all this." Yeah. Because the big thing, and this is okay. We'll come on to combat in a second, and let's say this is where the big change happens. Go on. Right. So that's activations, and when you activate, you basically a unit performs one action. Yes. However, that action can involve charging, in which case you can charge and attack. Okay, but usually it's either movement, attacking, charging, or some form of ranged combat.
Yeah, usual stuff.
Okay, so how does combat work, you ask? Sorry.
Neil, how does combat work?
Okay. Now, this is where you have something that, where, when I originally playtested this, we were still playing with with effectively the Test of Honor mechanics. Okay, and we were actually using the same dice. Those same stupid small dice. So then they have nice big chunky dice now. It's great. Okay, they have now changed it. The reason they have changed the mechanics so it is different from Test of Honor was simply this: Test of Honor, when it was designed, didn't really have much about armor in it. Okay, now I know. When the models arrived, it was Ashigaru and Samurai. That was down to Warlord saying, "Okay, we've got these models. This is what we're going to put in the box." Okay, that's not what the game was originally designed around. It was designed around unarmed combat, samurai not in armor, and stuff, as opposed to, we're talking here armored Greeks, unarmored Greeks, with various levels of armor. So they turned around and said, okay, we've got to change the mechanics because as they stood, they weren't happy that they fully reflected all the attack and defense bonuses of having multiple levels of armor. So at its heart, it's still the same, but several things have changed. So you have several characteristics on your unit. These include, other than right, of course, we haven't talked about things like how far you can move. Okay, depending on how heavily you're armored, depends on how far you can move. It's basically between 6 and 8 inches, depending whether you're light, medium, or heavy armed. Okay, obviously, the heavier armed you are, the less far you can move. Right. Okay, so you have, he says, because they keep changing the names. I'll tell you one thing, I am so pleased that the one thing, they had a great theme at one point of what they did for all the attributes was to use the letter of the Greek alphabet that they started with, which was brilliantly themed. However, we looked at we were playing it and it was kind of, what's this mean again? What's that mean again? You know what? We'll just use icons. Okay, so you have attack, defense, and resistance. Well, actually, the 4 involved in combat is attack, defense, resistance, and courage. Okay, so essentially, when you attack, you roll the number of attack dice. Okay, these are custom attack dice. They have several symbols on them. Those symbols are: they have 2 swords, they have 1 sword, they have a Pegasus symbol, they have a shield, and then they have blank sides. Okay, and you roll the number of dice equal to your unit or formation's attack value. Okay, and you're looking for swords or potentially Pegasus. Pegasus is basically a wild card that they've thrown in for certain special units. So some units use Pegasus as specials in attack, some use them in defense. And those details will be on the unit card. Okay, simple as that. But it just throws in that nice way of basically, as a mechanic, being able to use specials.
Yeah.
So you've done that. Okay. Then the defender can then choose what they're going to do. Do they use their activation to roll defense dice? Okay. This is a great one where if you're attacking a unit that hasn't activated yet, you can force them to use their activation to defend against an attack, at which point their activation is gone for the turn. However, that unit can choose not to actively defend itself, so it's relying on its armor to defend itself, for example. However, in order to do so, they need to take a test of courage. So they're looking for successes, i.e. swords, equal to their courage value, in order to be able to not roll active defense and just rely on their armor. Okay, so if they're using an activation, you roll the number of dice equal to their defense value. Okay, which is usually usually 3 or more. Obviously, depends again on how heavily armored you are. If you're just relying on your armor alone because you actually want to activate that unit to do something else, usually it's a case of you either rolling 2 dice if it's heavy armor, 1 dice if it's medium, 0 dice if it's light. Okay, and you're rolling again. You're looking for successes, and at the end of the day, it's an opposed dice roll. Okay. Number of successes in attack versus number of successes in defense.
Yep.
You take one from the other, and that's how many wounds.
Oh, that's the number of damage dice you roll.
That's the number of the number of damage dice you roll. Sorry. Then you roll damage dice. And at that point, you're testing it against the resistance. Okay. So again, you're looking for successes. Number of damage dice you roll. You're looking for successes. At that point, you're looking to match or you do greater than the resistance of the unit. Okay, if you beat the resistance of the unit, that unit is taken out. If you have less than the resistance of that unit, a model is taken off the unit. Not the unit is taken out. A model is removed because the resistance is for each individual model. Okay, so. You are looking for resistance with a number of successes, and then you use these damage dice. They're basically it's a D6 as a damage counter with some nice iconography on it, and so you can put those onto your hero or onto your unit to say, okay, this is actually how much damage I've taken, but I haven't. It's a counter until I hit my next resistance level, and that carries over. Now this is an alternative to people who've done playtest of Honor. This is an alternative to the blood drop, alternative to the blood drop mechanism. Okay, so they use damage instead. So it's a bit more. It's a bit more a case of it's a bit more attritional in that sense. So you're carrying over damage. So you could potentially effectively wound somebody and then do further wounds, which will cause somebody to get, which will cause a model to get removed. In some interesting little quirks, the one I really like is because ranged combat and melee combat work effectively the same. It's and again, it's all based on stats on the cards, so it's again successes. Some of the things that are nice little twists. So, for example, you can have things like slingers can fire twice because slings is fast. Peltasts, if you move and then throw in the direction you've moved, you increase the range of your javelin.
Yeah.
Which I just think is a lovely little mechanic. Basically, if you run and then throw, it goes further, which I think is great. And then obviously you got, but whether it's range combat or whether it's melee combat, it works essentially the same.
It's the standard stuff, isn't it? So, yeah. What about sort of morale and things? Is any rules on that? Well, actually, there is. There's the loss of courage.
That's it. Yeah, it is. Yes, there is. Sorry, it's into stuff I haven't done a lot of, but it's again, it's similar to what happens. So there's courage. So essentially, it's one of these things of if people start dying around you, then basically, you have to start taking tests of courage, or you start losing heart and start running away. And start retreating, or so. Essentially, you can lose your nerve if you don't roll any successes during when you roll a test of courage. You can just run off. There are ways that you can do that in such a way that you can cause enough damage to break formations. And similarly, if formations break, then those around them kind of go, "Oh heck." Again, tests of courage. So that's the other reason for using the courage attribute on your troops is so that if people die horribly around you, or die at all around you, you can potentially lose heart and then run off the battlefield, or at least retreat away from the enemy, depending on how badly you failed.
Yeah, I mean it's nice, simple rules. The dice mechanic is always good. The opposed rolls sort of thing. It should be quick and simple to play.
Yeah, and I mean the one thing I like about it as well. I mean you've got there's lots of different there's lots of variations in the way you can put your load together. Your load get the terminology right. There's lots of different variations in what you can do, but also actually there's loads. The one thing that is different in this, they have really worked on the scenarios.
Yes.
So it is obviously scenario driven because games are trying to tell stories. Okay. Right, so you've got 12 different scenarios. Okay? So there's 12 different scenarios. There are also 12 different deployment maps.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you have a combination. Of deployment map and scenario, giving
144. If my maths doesn't fail me.
Now, whether or not every deployment map works with every different scenario, I must admit I haven't checked. But bottom line is, you've got a very large number of variations that you can use, which is great. So really impressed with that game. I mean, obviously, there are rules covering all sorts of terrain. Different rules for covering whether things like line of sight and various other bits and pieces, but at its heart, it is a game about telling a story. So it's all about the scenarios.
Yeah.
But it is simple, straightforward, and actually a great deal of fun.
Yeah, it looks. I mean, when I was reading through it, I just thought it just looked like it's going to be a fun game. It's light. I mean, you can go into the, how historical is it scenario, sort of list. But I think for getting 20 odd figures aside on a table and having a bash around, it sort of it scotches that Greek myth, that ancient Greek myth, shall we say?
Yeah, and a game lasts probably about 2 hours.
Yeah, and I've got to say, with the rule book, there's a lot of very well researched historical information in there. So if
There is.
so if you want a primer on, what is a locust, what is a phalanx according to Homer, what's a hoplite, what's a Siloi, there's sidebars covering all that sort of stuff, and the Spartan one as well is excellent because it gives a full history of Sparta during that period. And again, you've got different gifts and stuff in there, so it allows you to theme it quite nicely. So I can see the way they're going to go with it. You look at it and think, it's generic enough to cover a large period of time in the Hellenic period. It's not just saying that this is just for the Peloponnesian War. They could quite easily drop down to Troy. They could quite easily, include the Persians and Thermopylae and that sort of stuff. But it's all about little skirmishes.
Yeah. Funnily enough, that's exactly where they're going. I mean, they're starting at basically the whole basis is they're starting at the start of the Peloponnesian War, but because they're turning around and saying, well, it's like when you start talking about ancient Greece, most people think classic ancient Greece, and actually, if you go back to the Trojan War, the armor's different. But they turn around and say, well, if we did that, people who didn't know the period would turn around and say they're not proper Greeks. Because obviously the armor is stylistically very different. Let's face it, most people, when you talk about ancient Greek warfare, most people think of the hoplon and the and the big Corinthian helmet. That's the thing that immediately springs to mind. But of course, that's classic Greek warfare, and of course, not everybody wore it, and also different forces looked very different. That's why it's put where it is. However, there is definitely stuff in the works to look at Persia, especially to go back to the Trojan War.
Yeah, and you can see why, because it fits in with that. And this idea of having little skirmishes, of having little groups going out, trying to disrupt their opponents, try and draw them out into a bigger battle is a great idea. So,
yeah. So that is Mortal Gods. I mean, we banged on about Mortal Gods for longer than we were anticipating, I believe. But we still have another set of rules of a similar, maybe slightly smaller level. Okay, let Mike explain this one. So the other set of rules we have is, Michael.
It is of Gods and Mortals, the mythological wargame rules, which came out from Osprey Publishing a few years ago.
Yeah, I believe it was. Oh, crikey! I think it was number 5, if I remember rightly, in their blue wargame sets of rules. Yes, by Andreas Filigoy.
I'm so glad you said that because I always get his surname wrong. So Andrea, if you're listening,
blame me. Blame Neil this time round. Yes, So it's yes. He of Ganesha Games fame wrote this set of rules for Osprey. So Michael, in a similar vein. Okay, so what sort of size forces are we looking at? What sort of components do we need?
Similarly to Mortal Gods, you're looking at about 20 figures. You will have to have a god, because this game it's mythological warfare. So it's basically gods from different pantheons ganging up on each other with some heroes from their pantheons and some mortals who are trying to stay alive throughout the whole game. So the reason we brought it in here is because it does cover the Greek pantheon quite nicely. And myself and Neil have quite a lot of Greek figures.
Indeed, because obviously the mortals are catered for via Mortal Gods.
Yes.
However, if you just so happened to be a backer of, I don't know, something like Mythic Battles Pantheon, for example.
That's your Greek force done. There we go.
There we go. And obviously, since the Greek gods fought, obviously as Mythic Battles is all about, since the Greek gods fought each other.
It's a perfect reason for doing it. So that's why I picked it up. It's because Matt from Glenbrook Games mentioned it, and I thought, I like Andrea's rules. I like the idea. I'm painting some hoplites up. I got some gods. What could go wrong? So,
okay, just for completeness, what the pantheons does it cover?
It covers. He says, flicking through the rules, we have Greeks, Egyptians, Norse, and Celts.
Mm.
And there is also, I found on Amazon, there is a Celt book which expands on the Celtic pantheon. So, yeah, I mean, Greeks is great because I got the figures. If you like your Egyptians, your Norse, and your Celts, well, off you go, because you can play them all together.
Yeah. Now, this does have an official miniature range.
It does, yeah. I think it's still going from North Star.
From North Star,
yeah.
Yes. However, it has to be said, the gods figures aren't as impressive as the ones that come in Mythic Battles Pantheon, because it has to be said, those are really nice miniatures, aren't they?
They are, yeah. So,
anyway.
The things you need to play. You need 3 dice, 3 6-sided dice. You need some miniatures. You need some measuring sticks. Now, this is a thing that is common throughout an awful lot of Andrea's rules. Using measuring sticks, and you basically have a short, medium, and long. Which are short is 7.5 centimeters, medium is 12, and long is 18. I'll probably be using my Saga ones, which are slightly different sizes, but I think it should be okay.
Well, I think as long as it's consistent,
yeah,
right.
As long as you're consistent both sides, you're fine. And then you want about a 3x3 playing surface and terrain and stuff. So, it's a turn-based sequence. The troops in there, going to sort of the army creation. You have to have a god,
right?
So you choose your god. Then you can choose some legends, which is sort of like demigods, heroes, monsters, that sort of stuff.
So within the Greek pantheon, for example, what sort of thing would that be?
Well, you're going to make me look up at the back of the rules now, aren't you? Go to
I'm just thinking of examples, mate. Just so people know what we're talking about.
Yes. Examples of legends. We've got things like the Minotaur, Harpies, Cyclops, Medusa, Pegasus, Chimera, Cerberus, Hercules, Perseus, Theseus, Odysseus, Achilles. You know the ones.
What is it? A lot of yeses.
There's a lot of yeses.
A lot of yeses.
And then, for mortals, so like I say, there's 3 power sequences. You got your gods, you got your legends. Now, you can only have a certain number of legends per game. It's a point-based system. You can only spend a certain number of points on legends. Everything else then has to be spent on mortals. Basically, the grunts, shall we say. And they come in groups, which are either open order or closed order. And those go between 1 and 8 figures per group.
Okay, cool.
Sorry, there can't be a single figure, so it's between 2. It's between 4 and 8 models at this, for a group. I do apologise. So, a similar thing, you get your stats. So for your mortals, for your Greeks, because we're concentrating on Greek, because this is our Greek theme, the mortal units you can have satyrs, dryads, centaurs. So we're not just talking about humans here.
All right. So we're still we can still potentially look at fantastical troops,
but they count as sort of mortal troops.
Right.
Okay. Amazons. You got Greek hoplites, Greek archers, Spartans, Spartites, Siloi, cavalry, undead. Yes, you can have your Greek skeletons because you want them.
Oh,
You know,
because obviously, Hades has to have his forces of undead.
yeah, indeed. And there are actually special rules for some of the gods which say they have to have undead, like Hades. You can even have wild stags or stampeding cattle, which I love the idea of. So, I mean, each of these troops, you've got three. You've got two values really. You've got their quality, and you've got their combat strength, and then there'll be special rules, and all. It's the typical thing where you've got lots of special rules that tell you how to tweak these things. So you put your army together from your points. You get your units of mortals. You get a couple of heroes, and you get a single god.
Cool. Okay, so how does the turn sequence work?
Right. So what you do, you roll a dice at the start of the game. You get +1 if your forces of lower points than your opponent's. Nice. Winner decides who's going to be attacking defender. Defender sets up the table, and then players alternate deploying units until they're started. And then at the start of a turn, you roll a dice. Whoever gets the highest decides who takes the first turn, and then you alternate after that.
Right, so if you roll the dice, it isn't a case of you take first, you decide whether you want to go first or second.
Yes. The winner decides.
Cool.
And then what you do is you activate a single unit. So you pick one of your units. So a unit would be either a god, a single hero, or a group of mortals. You pick one, and you go through this is a classic Andrea rule, right? You roll 1, 2, or 3 dice, and you're looking for a success roll, which is based on their quality. So if your quality is 4, you can decide to roll 1 dice. If you get a 4, you get 1 action. If you roll 2 dice and you roll 1 success, 1 failure, something could happen. If you roll 2 failures, other things happen. So you're looking for successes, and the number of successes you get gives you the number of things that you can do with that unit, number of activations. Okay, now then, if things go wrong, so say you fail, if you fail on 1 dice, your opponent can try and do a reaction on that failure. And that reaction happens before your action. So say I roll 2 dice, I pass 1, and I fail 1, and I'm playing against Neil. Neil will pick one of his units, roll a single dice, and if he passes his quality, he gets to carry out a single activation on his unit. If you fail on 2 dice, turn's over. So you decide how many dice you want to roll. So it's the classic, activation that he uses in a lot of his rolls. It's always great fun.
So is it a case of once that unit is activated, you can then move on to another unit on your side? Yes. However, at the point where as soon as you have, for want of a better phrase, a catastrophic failure of activity roll, it passes you. It passes you.
No, sorry. It says you nominate a single unit that you want to attempt to activate, and then your opponent then gets to activate. Yes.
Oh right, okay. So that is slightly different to. That is slightly different to the classic Songs of Blades style. Then, so it is alternative unit activation, but there is a potential for that unit.
No, sorry, I got it wrong. It is the classic one. It just he's worded it oddly. So yeah. As soon as you fail,
right,
with 2 failures, it goes over to your opponent.
Yes, but until that point. And until that point, you can activate multiple units.
Exactly.
Cool.
So when you fail, what can happen is the number of dice you fail on, your opponent then does a reaction on that. So say I rolled 3 dice and I failed with 2. Neil will then roll 2 dice looking for successes. He could then activate one of his troops with that. I would then finish my activation by doing with my 1 success I had left, and then it turns over. If that makes sense. So, in a sense, in fact, I shall read from the book. So, if you have 1 success and 2 failures, your opponent may immediately perform a reaction with a unit of the same or higher tier. That's an interesting one. It's unit of the same or higher tier. So, if you fail with a god, your opponent. God,
only
exactly.
gods can react.
So, once you do that, so your opponent immediately performs a reaction with that unit. You may then perform 1 action of the chosen unit. You may then perform 1 action with the chosen unit, and then you turn over. So basically, that's the way it goes. So that's the basic activation, and and the reactions are sort of similar. The actions you can take, you can move 1 action per move. The amount you move depends on the type of figure you are. Standard ones move medium. There's long moves which you move along, and so forth. You can change from close order to line or column if you've got a closed order unit. If you've got 2 actions, so say you make 2 successes, you can perform a powerful attack or an aim shot, which takes 2. If you've got 3 actions, successes, you can make a powerful attack or an aim shot with +2. But only legends and gods can do that.
Right.
If you've got 4 actions, you can make an even more powerful thing. But you're asking yourself, Neil, how can I have 4 actions with 3 dice?
Michael, how can I possibly have 4 actions with 3 dice?
Good question, Neil. Because there's a lovely little rule here of an activation called an invocation. And I'll read directly from the rulebook. Invocation. Mortal units not engaged in melee may perform an invocation instead of rolling for activation. Invocations can be used in 2 different ways. 1, to summon back in play a god who's been killed, or to give extra activation dice to a god, up to a maximum of 3. Now, these dice that you give to the gods, you want them to be a different colour to your standard activations. What you do is you would say, right, I'm going to do an invocation with this 1 unit, get a dice, like a blue dice, and put it behind your god. When your god activates, the god can roll, essentially, all of those dice. So he could pick he can have up to 3 invocation dice, plus he can choose to have another 3 of his own dice. He can roll all 6 and count the successes, but the invocation dice don't count as failures in the same way as the Passover. So it means that you can do things like you could give your god 2 invocation dice. They could then just roll a single dice plus their 2 with 3 dice and know they're not going to get a Passover because they'll only have a single failure, and a single failure just means that your opponent gets to take a reaction. So suddenly these little mortal troops who are sort of running around trying not to get killed, they become very useful.
Yes, this was the lovely. I remember now. This is the lovely little quirk with this game is that actually, the fact that you got these little mortals wandering around with gods, the fact that they worship them is actually pretty vital to the way that your army works.
Exactly, and the other thing that's quite nice is you can also have a free move action. So these are actions that don't involve activation, so you don't have to roll any dice for these. You can just say, I'm taking a free move. If you have no active enemies within 2 long measurements, you can perform a single non-combat rule. So you can basically just move freely. because it's taken that you haven't got any enemy, close to you, so you can, you can just move around.
Mhm.
Movement is the standard classic thing. You get a movement value depending on the type of troop you are. You've got your measuring sticks. You move a certain value in a straight line.
Yeah, this is the one you can only move in a straight line, can't you?
You always move in a straight line, yeah. So if you want to move around a corner, you can move to any point of the measuring stick, stop, and then the second action you move again in a different direction.
Yes, to move around the corner takes 2 activations because you have to use 1 activation to change direction. Yes.
Exactly. Yes. Right, so that's sort of the standard sort of moving and activation stuff, and it takes a bit to get your head around, I think.
Yeah.
The activation, because it's this betting, 1, 2, or 3 dice. I could roll 1 and know I'm not going to lose my turn, but I might be able to do less. I could roll 2. Well, what's the worst that can happen? My opponent might be able to try and activate one of his units. It's that 3. If I roll 3, I've got a good chance of losing the end of, my turn could end.
Yeah, but at the same time, if you get 3 successes, oh boy, can you do some good stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. So,
combat. How does combat work?
Right. Okay. So, if you move into combat, if you move adjacent to an enemy, you go into what is called melee. But combat doesn't take place then. Combat only takes place when a unit is activated.
Oh, right. Okay.
To perform a melee attack. So you can move up, but you have to have a second activation or in the next turn to attack.
Oh, right. So charge isn't a moving attack. That kind of doesn't exist.
No. The only actions that you can take, I will tell you now. The actions you can take are move, close order unit, go from column. Yeah, it is just a standard move.
Okay, cool.
So there's no charge activations. Right, melee. So you got units in base contact with each other. What you do is you take your combat value for that unit, which is sort of 1, 2, 3, or 4. You roll a dice and add that to it, and then you add some modifiers. And the modifiers, you get +1 if you're outnumbering, +2 if you're greatly outnumbering them. If you're attacking a close order unit in a column, you get +1. There's a few others. You got your powerful attacks, you got your ambush bonuses, you got mounted units, all giving +1s and stuff. You each roll. You work out the values, and it's the difference. The one with the highest value is the winner. And for every 3 points above the difference, it's 1 wound. So basically, mortal units lose 1 figure from the group. Gods and legends are a little bit different. But essentially, so say I rolled my d6 and I got a 5 and I had a combat of say 2 and I was outnumbering, that would give me 8. And I'm saying, Neil, you had a quality of 1 and you rolled a 1. So, and you had another bonus. So say you got a 3, it's a difference in 5. You would lose 1 troop because it's 1 for every 3 difference.
Right.
Okay. Outnumbering is worked out. You basically have a point. So each mortal figure counts as 1. A legend counts as 4, and a god counts as 8. And you count up how many are. So, say I had a legend and a 4-man unit against one of your 6-man units. Your value would be 6, mine would be 8. I outnumber you, I get a +1.
Right.
But if I manage to outnumber you greatly, it's +2. And that stays the same depending on how many, it doesn't matter how many figures are in the group, for working out your combat modifier, so working out your combat level, your combat quality, shall we say, it's always the same. So it doesn't matter if a group has got 2 figures in it or 8 figures. If their combat score is 2, it's always 2. It just means that you can lose more troops before you actually sort of break and run away, which I'm not 100% sure about. I'll be honest with you, but I can kind of get it. So,
yeah,
casualties. Mortal casualties handles literally, each casualty take off a figure.
Right. Okay. So basically, troops effectively have 1 wound.
Pretty much, yeah.
Cool.
If you're in close order, you take the figures off from the back. Right. Legends and gods. So if a legend is killed by a god, the legend is dead, basically.
Right.
If a legend...
do legends have multiple wounds?
Nope. Everything has 1 wound.
Okay.
Right. If a legend is a casualty from a mortal unit, you turn the result into a knockdown by passing the quality test. So they get like a saving throw.
Right. Okay.
If the quality test fails, the legend is dead. For gods, a god kills...
Hang on a second. What if a legend is attacked by a legend?
It's the same. It's they're dead. Yeah.
So if a legend is attacked by a legend,
yeah,
or a god,
they're dead. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay.
Oh, so it's killed by a legend or a god. They're killed. Yeah, they're dead. Yeah.
Killed. Okay, cool.
If a god is killed by a god, it dies. If a god takes a casualty from mortal or legend, it can turn that casualty result into a recoil by passing quality test on 1 dice. If the test fails, the god dies. However, gods do not really die. They're just banished, and they can be brought back by invocation. Right.
Aha. Yes.
There's rules to...
I'm not really dead.
I'm just hiding. I'm a puff of smoke. There's rules for tied melees, but one rule I do like is if you've got 2 gods fighting and they tie in a melee, they have a thing called Clash of the Titans, and you create a 1 long radius explosion centered on the 2. Legends caught in the blast and locked down. Mortals caught in the blast are awed, which basically mean they're a little bit shocked, and if you attack them, you're going to get +3 in melee. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Because they're gone, oh, look at that.
Yeah. What the hell was that? And you can only get rid of that all marker by spending 2 actions.
Ooh, that's quite nasty.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's the sort of rules. I mean, you got powerful tactical ambushes. There's rules for leaving melee, the usual stuff. Range combat is sort of the same sort of thing. Targeting the priorities, whoever's closest. It's the classic stuff.
Yeah. Now, okay, so is this an encounter game? Is it a scenario game? Is it campaign based? What is it?
It's scenario based, but the scenarios are fairly standard. You've got the classic showdown, Sacred Grove, Spring of Youth, Temple Under Siege sort of things. It's there are rules in there for campaigns, so you can fight a series of battles with different victory conditions, and they allow you to spend points on bringing back dead legends if you want, or you can add extra stuff to your units and stuff. So yeah, I think there's sort of 6 different scenarios in there, and then you've got these little sort of campaign systems, which gives you a little bit extra points as well for winning a campaign battle. Yeah, a scenario is a scenario, isn't it? It's the thing I like about it is all the abilities you get.
Yeah.
So you can have flying creatures. You can have a frost ability where you can, basically breathe cold air that covers ice, within a short distance. There's drunkards abilities. There's confound. There's one called Release the Kraken,
Oh, you don't want to do that.
You don't want to do that. You need a bit of water for that one.
Right.
And there's ways to do it. So there's lots of fluff around it, which is always good. So all of your troop types are all slightly different, even though you've got this very basic, one value which is your quality, which is what you need to roll over to activate them, and then another value which is your combat modifier. You've then got all the abilities that just tweak things around and make them act a little bit differently. But yeah, I mean, I've been reading through it, and I really want to get this on the table. I mean, I've played a lot of Andrea's games before. I like them, and
yeah, I liked it because, especially though those little quirks around, I mean, obviously, especially the whole kind of invocation and worship, the fact that your gods are that your god is effectively as strong as its mortal worshipping force.
Yeah.
And should you lose all your worshippers, you're potentially in a bit of
exactly,
trouble.
yeah, because you can't make your god back. Pretty much.
No.
And there is morale in it as well. As soon as you sort of lose half your troops, everybody left has to make a roll to see if they're staying on the table or run away. It's that sort of stuff, It's what we expect, but it's a small amount of troops, and it means that, for example, the troops I got for my mortal gods, I can now play this with no problem at all. It means I paid up some heroes.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. It's because when we put this whole thing together, we were thinking. One of the things in the back of my mind was thinking of, well, okay, what can we've got these Greek troops. What can we use them for? And are there multiple systems? And especially, of course, if you happen to have models lying around, and of course, you don't just have had to have got into something like Mythic Battles, for example, because things like a lot of the legendary creatures are the sort of thing you'd find in half of your fantasy collections. Yeah. Because let's face it, there's a bit of a crossover between the average fantasy monster and Greek myth. The only thing that you may be missing is the odd god figure.
So it's like I say, anyone who's played any of Andrea's rules will know what they're like. If you haven't played one, it's worth trying one out. They're small games. He has done a few big battle games, but they use this activation, this 1, 2, or 3 dice. It's the pushing your luck, because if you roll 2 failures, you're going to finish your turn. So it's and it's a simple mechanic, but it's a lovely mechanic. It's a classic. Like I say, the only thing I'm not sure about is the fact that troops, or mortals, shall we say, their combat ability, it doesn't matter how many of them are left in that group. Even if it goes on to 1, you still get the same bonus. The only difference you have for having more troops in a group is you get that +1 or +2 for the outnumbering. However, that can make a bit of a difference. So I think it's a similar mechanic to what they've used in some of his other games, like 60, 61, 65, and Songs of Drums and Shackles.
Yeah.
I think they use a similar mechanic in that. So I'd like to try it out, but I can see what he's getting there. It's going to make combat really simple. It's a single dice for combat, counter, take off some troops.
Yeah. And things we haven't discussed as far as this is concerned. Okay, so if you wanted Mortal Gods, price point for Mortal Gods, and obviously this at the moment this includes the box set. Is I believe because it had an introductory price, but I believe full price is 50. Is it £50? Yeah. But obviously that includes loads of cards and stuff, and a full set of models. You can also pick up the Sparta or Athens box sets. I believe they're 35 each.
Yes, about that.
Yeah, something like that. Some discount is available depending where you go.
Mm.
How about Of Gods and Mortals?
I think it cost me £11. It's an Amazon rule set. It's
it's a typical Osprey rule set. Actually, at the moment, if you buy it on PDF, there's actually very little price difference. A lot of the Osprey rule books you can generally pick up on PDF for about £7. Of Gods and Mortals is still I think it's 50p cheaper on PDF if you buy it on PDF/Kindle. As opposed to buying it in hard copy. But as you say, if you got the models for one, it basically means you have a second system for a small number of pennies. Now, there is a note in future because, interestingly, Footsore are known as an historical-based company, primarily. However, interestingly, on this, Andy did turn around and say, because Greek myth was so integral to Greek society, and the whole thing about the worship of the gods and the existence of otherworldly creatures was such an integral part of Greek society that actually they are planning on doing a mythic expansion for Mortal Gods,
which would be great.
Which will be great. Which will even further means that you can tie in on either of these systems. Obviously, but that is something in the future, and I suspect that's probably going to be a year in the future before that comes out. There's a few things they want to do first, I think. But as you say, we've got two, on the face of it, similar size, but actually quite different games. That you can use with a similar number of figures.
Yeah, exactly. And it's all for the good, because as much as I do like my Greek history, I've read quite a bit about the sort of Peloponnesian War, and especially sort of the Persian period. It does interest me. But at heart, I do like my Harryhausen films. It's
this is it. I mean, I'm kind of at the other end. I mean, to be honest, outside of watching Clash of the Titans, the original Clash of the Titans. Let's ignore this remake rubbish. Sorry, Mr. Worthington, but there you go. And Clash of the Titans and 300. My actual kind of Greek history. Oh, and Troy. My actual Greek history is a bit patchy, so it's a bit of a rediscovery for a bit of a new discovery for me. To the point of I'm looking at there's things like for example I've got the Osprey essential histories on the Peloponnesian War to look at on as a bit of a kind of a brief introduction to what's going on. It's an interesting period, isn't it?
Yeah, it's an interesting period. I think this has always been the thing with Greek wargaming in sort of ancient Greece. It's quite static, and I think that's what we're going to find in our next episode, Neil. Is how can you take what is sort of fairly static warfare, where they form lines and just bash into each other most of the day, and turn that into a good game. So
yeah, because that is the one thing with a skirmish, with a small group in a skirmish game.
It's a lot easier.
Yes, it's a lot easier. It retains it. Well, it's a dynamic game. there is a lot going on. There's a lot of movement and stuff. Once the forces get bigger, and you start talking about phalanxes and phalanx combat, it becomes a bit of a different animal. But that's all to be discussed on the next show.
All for good. So there we go. So 2 little games. If you're interested in Greek history and stuff, and you want to try it out, Mortal Gods is a great little system to get you into it. Like you say, it's stuff full of plastics. It's enough to get you going. It's clever mechanics. And then you got Gods and Mortals if you want to do something on the slightly more fantastical side.
Cool stuff. Okay, we'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back and wrap up the show.
Oh.
So, given the subject matter that we've discussed and the fact, looking at the hobby, I think it's fair to say that your painting future contains an awful lot of kind of like, I don't know, Mediterranean flesh and bronze, and then the odd dash of colour from some sort of mythological creature. Yeah.
Yeah, for now, until I get bored and I'll paint something else. I've still got orcs on my table.
Indeed.
There'll always be Lord of the Rings, Neil.
Oh yes, indeed. Yeah, but no, it's as you say. I mean, interestingly as well, the other thing is that got me thinking was that because I mean, despite how good a system Mythic Battles Pantheon is, it's nice to kind of look at using some of those figures in something else, because well, so I mean, amongst other things, they're really nice figures. I mean, I was thinking, like, for example, I know they produced models for things like the healer and the seer and the musicians for Mortal Gods. However, the cards are in the main in the main game, so there's nothing to stop you using, like some of the character figures from Mythic Battles, for example, to represent your healer or represent your seer.
Yeah.
And stuff like this, and there's a lovely mix and match available. So especially if you do happen to be a backer of Mythic Battles, and I know a number of people who listen to the podcast were, then this is a lovely crossover between the two.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, but as you say, even with things like, for such a Greek novice as me, the simple fact that Mortal Gods does go through this. Okay, right. This is what what on earth is a define a hoplite. Basically, how did this all work? Even to the point of turning around and saying, okay, what was a city-state? Well, actually, there's a bit of an issue around about how you define something like that. But at least it goes and talks about it.
Yeah, it's a great primer for people who don't know anything at all about ancient Greek history or warfare.
Oh, it is. They have done a really good job with it. I mean, okay, it's one of those things of it gives you all the basics, and then obviously from there you can kick off and investigate for as much or as little as you wish.
I must admit, one of the things I want to try with Mortal Gods is I wonder how well it will play if you've just got a bunch of heroes, a small bunch of Greek heroes.
Oh, that would be fun. Yeah, that would be interesting.
Yeah.
What, you almost like Jason and the Argonauts sort of thing?
Well, I don't want to put words into your mouth, Neil, but yeah, some of that.
Considering, I don't know, considering...
I got the figures for them.
Considering some, and also some of the skeleton, what was it? There was a certain box set of skeletons coming out that have a passing resemblance to something that Mr. Harryhausen put together at some point. Yeah.
So yeah, tweak it, play with it, see, play around with the rules.
Yeah, and And to be fair, the one thing I didn't mention is that, Mortal Gods will go bigger. You've got to be a little bit careful because there is the possibility that it could get bogged down. Once you're starting getting lots of groups of miniatures on the table, but certainly, I think certainly you can go. I know people who've gone up to 50 points or something like that using Test of Honor, and it kind of still holds together. But obviously it does start to either make the game longer, or you're in a situation where there's going to be a lot of issues with friction and lots of units not activating. So that's something to be aware of, because obviously there's still only those three fate markers. But you can start pushing the envelope, and it will cater for bigger battles.
I can imagine it going for like 40 aside quite easily.
Yeah.
Because you do have this concept of groups of the aforementioned phalanxes.
Yeah, and especially with that formation rule, which is something you don't get in. It's something you don't get in sort of like Test of Honor, for example. So let's face it, in a standard army, you'll probably only have a couple of phalanxes, because you'll have phalanxes, some supporting light troops, and then a couple of heroes. And that's kind of where you're at. So, you're looking at what? About 20, 23, 24 troops sort of thing. Like 18 hoplites, 6 Persoli, and 2 heroes. And that is your basic force. Once you start pushing that further, that's when there are differences to be had. It's interesting how the force construction allows you to go in different directions. There are good. It's a nice set of rules on that, but basically allowing more heroes in bigger forces. So, while still keeping the focus on fighting troops.
But anyway, it's late. We probably should wrap this up.
Indeed it is. So, yes, because you'll probably be listening to us for way more than 2.5 hours. So it is about time that we drew this to a close. So thank you once again for listening, Mr. Hobbs. Thank you for coming on the show and sharing all your knowledge and knowledge, thoughts, and ideas.
I didn't show much knowledge. I showed a lack of knowledge in some very, very specific ways. So I've just remembered this. I think it's pronounced Silloy. Yeah.
Silloy.
Hey-ho. Yes.
Right. Okay. I don't.
There you go. And we're back in the game. So, it's been a pleasure as always to come on the show.
Thank you all for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it. And as we said, next time around we'll be revisiting ancient Greece, but looking at what you can do should you wish to expand your miniature collection somewhat and fight some bigger battles.
Indeed.
So, until next time, take care, everyone. Happy gaming. And we'll speak to you in a couple of weeks.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Meeples and Miniatures podcast. If you've enjoyed the show, why not share it with others by leaving us a review on iTunes? And if you have any comments or questions, you can always email the show. The address is info@meeplesandminiatures.co.uk. And you can also visit our webpage, where you'll find a complete episode archive, all the View from the Veranda podcasts, rules reviews, and our blog of hobby items and news, which is updated several times a week. This is also where you'll find the links to our presence on social media, and here you can follow us on Twitter or join our Facebook group. And finally, here you can also find details should you wish to support us by making a donation to the podcast. All this on the Meeples and Miniatures website, www.meeplesandminiatures.co.uk. The Meeples and Miniatures podcast is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 3.0 Unported license. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.